So today we will be focusing on events and adapting events during this time of physical distancing. And the reason we're focusing on this topic is because for most of our retirement organizations, events are the way we connect with our members. They're our primary means of member engagement. And with the current situation, of course, in-person events are not happening, or they may just start to happen gradually here. But especially for older adults, large in-person events may not be possible for some time to come. So organizations are going to need to expand our thinking about what constitutes an event, because the real purpose of events is to foster communications and connections. And when we can't be together in person, we need to foster those communications in other, more creative ways. And why? Before we move on with that, I am going to just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Sue Barnes. I am a retiree myself, just retired July 1st. Before I retired, I worked for the UC system for nearly 25 years, both for UC Davis and for UCLA. In the last several years of my career were as directors of the retirement centers for both of those institutions. And joining me today as our moderator, and he will be moderating the chat function, is Bill Verdini from ASU Emeritus College at Arizona State University. And Bill, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you?
Good morning, everyone. I retired from Arizona State University in 2011. After that, I served as the Dean of the Emeritus College here for 4 years. And I am currently president-elect of EMORY, so happy to see that this is going on. I will be signing off on my audio and video so I can monitor the chats. And Carrie, if you're able to do that too, please help out if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So for the meeting format today, participants will be muted except for Bill and I. 6 EMORY members have volunteered to share their strategies. They will be unmuted one at a time, and Bill will be taking care of that for me. And just so you know, I don't have my chat window open, so I won't be able to see the chat. Bill will. So he has permission to interrupt me at any time if we need to make some changes or answer questions or anything. So comments, questions, and links can be submitted in the chat function. If you are not currently muted, I do ask that you mute yourself just to help with our sound. I appreciate that. And I will pause as time allows so Bill can relate questions and comments. After each of the EMORY members gives their presentations, we will be using breakout rooms for small group discussion. And this is our first time using breakout rooms, so bear with us while we learn to do this along with everybody else. So one thing I want to mention before I get started with talking about events specifically is the idea of member engagement. And as I mentioned when we first got started, events are the way that typically our organizations engage our members. And the reason it's important to rethink events and keep members engaged is because those connections and that engagement is the way we retain members, right? And most of us are coming up to our renewal process for retaining members. And there's 2 components we need to remember in terms of member engagement. And the first is value. What's the value of someone's membership in your organization? And by value, I mean, what's the ROI, the return on investment? What benefits can retirees get from your organization that they don't easily get anywhere else? The second aspect of membership engagement is belonging. And by that, belonging has 2 parts really: ownership, opportunities to lead, to volunteer, to express your opinions about the organization, and then relationships, the feelings of being appreciated and of being respected, of being seen and heard, and being a part of a group. So when we talk about membership engagement, it's important to remember that it's easy for our members to walk away from an organization. It is not easy for members to walk away from people. And I'll repeat that because it's really important. It's easy for members to walk away from an organization. It is not easy for them to walk away from people. So the important thing to remember is to keep reaching out personally, keep those connections going, and do that in an ongoing and regular way. Okay. So as we talk about adapting events, for this webinar, we're going to be focusing on primarily social events and signature events and special events. Our last webinar focused a little bit more on educational programs, and some of our folks that will be sharing today will be talking about that a bit as well, but we'll mostly be focusing on social and signature events. It's more challenging to adapt social and signature events, where the emphasis is generally more on interactions. It's going to take creativity and innovation, and often it will involve finding ways to segment our events. For example, as we're doing today, we'll be doing a presentation for the entire group, and then we'll be breaking into breakout rooms to allow for more interaction. It's like if you go to say a big dinner for Emeriti or retirees, and you might have a keynote speaker. Everybody together listens to the keynote speaker, but then when you want to have conversation, that happens during the social hour, when you're meeting in small groups, or during dinner when you're sitting at your table of 8. So we have to find ways to replicate that experience when we talk about adapting social events. And then one last thing I will say before we move on to the presentations from our organizations is that we will probably see a gradual return to normal. And as we look at opening up the country as we're doing now and returning to events, what we are going to find, though, especially with the older population, is for people to feel comfortable to come to events, we may need to make adaptations even as we start to do more in-person events. We may need to do more outdoor events. We may need to always offer a virtual option for those people who don't feel comfortable coming to the event. We may need to provide hand sanitizer. We may not be able to offer buffets. We may need to have boxed lunches. We may need to avoid lining people up, and we may need to limit our capacity. I don't have time to go into a great deal of detail about this, and we aren't going to focus on that today, but I just wanted to mention it because it's not going to be, I don't think, all virtual or all in person for some time coming forward. There may need to be some interim type measures being taken. And I've provided a link here to a survey that was done, and this survey focused on how people will feel about visiting cultural events or cultural destinations such as museums and things like that. But I do think that the survey relates very closely to what we're looking at when we're asking people to come to events once things get returned to normal. And so I will be sending out the PDF of these slides. You'll be able to click on that link. Don't try to copy it down now. You'll be able to click on the link and see that survey so that you can start to get an idea of what we may be looking at as we get back to the other side of this pandemic. So now we're going to turn our attention to our members who have volunteered to share their strategies today. And I would like everyone to remember that really all of us are at the beginning of this situation and this journey that we're learning along with all of you. So today's conversation is really just a start. Our member organizations that will be sharing their strategies are, some of them have already held their events, and some of them are planning events where they have adapted to a virtual reality. And so I hope that we'll continue to share with one another as we learn more and go along. Bill, I'm going to pause there to see if there were any questions or comments that came in.
No questions or comments yet. I sent a reminder out to everyone that if you do have a question or a comment, please send a chat to Bill Verdini. Also, those of you who have just joined us, please chat your name and institution to everyone.
Okay, thank you. And again, for those who are just joining, I apologize for the incorrect link that went out this morning. I was in a bit of a rush and I sent the link from the last webinar. So I hope that didn't cause you too much angst, and I really apologize. So right now then, we are going to turn it over to our first speaker, which is Abby Baker and Richard Knopf from Arizona State University, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Abby and Richard.
Thank you. This is Rick, and I wanted to make a comment about the nature of ASU. We're branding ourselves as the new American University, where the focus is on inclusion rather than exclusion by also maintaining the high standards in research and community impact. Right now, in particular, one of our fortes is to focus on universal learning, where we're building adaptive learning systems for any person, anywhere, anytime, any background, any learning disposition. So OLLI at ASU is one manifestation of that charter. We have a three-part mission: connecting older adults to ASU, building a profound sense of community among older adults in our watershed, and providing pathways to purpose and public service. About early to mid-March, we had a dramatic shift from full classroom engagement to the online portfolio. And importantly, we have done well. Our members, our 2,500 members have responded well. And we're building virtual communities as well as virtual learning experiences. The mastermind behind all of this is my colleague, Abby Baker. She's going to kind of take us through a quick spin on what has been accomplished. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Rick. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that we've done to engage our members in creative ways in the virtual space. So our focus will be more on social events than the signature events. Very early on in the process, I think it was right around like March 17th, we launched the party line, which is that first link that you see on your slide. And the party line is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week open Zoom meeting, very much like party lines on phones that used to exist in neighborhoods. So any member can hop on anytime and see who else is on there. They can chat, they can just have a coffee together. And what we started doing too is we started creating activities. So we would have instructors would pop on and do just like a very informal chat. We would have members that wanted to get on and talk about a specific topic. So that party line was open for reservation by anyone kind of under our umbrella. And it created a really fun way for people to get used to the new technology and to connect in a more casual social atmosphere that didn't seem as overwhelming as asking someone to stay after class in a digital classroom. So that was one way that we really wanted to just leave the door open for our members to feel comfortable engaging regardless of the time and without needing staff intervention. They didn't need us to be able to talk to their friends. All they had to do was text their friends and say, hey, hop on that party line that all of us got in email. That party line still happens. So it's been going on since March 17th, 24 hours a day. We still see tons of fun activities on there. One social event that's happened 2 times so far, and the third one is happening this Saturday, is an Explore the World series, which is where we have an intergenerational discussion about places that people have traveled. And so it's kind of hosted by 3 ASU students, and they encourage our members to bring artifacts from around the house and talk about where they got them and the story behind them. And it's just a really special experience. So that's probably the opportunity for the most prevalent opportunity for social engagement that our members have. Like Rick mentioned, we did transition our classes online. We also have community care letters, which are bi-weekly, very long letters that are full of opening remarks from staff or members or instructors. They have resources, they have fun things to do at home, they have ways to engage in the ASU community. There are carefully curated news stories that provide space for people to think about what's going on in different or positive ways. There's notes from other members, there's poems that members have written. So it's really just kind of become this way for members to kind of shut off the outside world and just sit with an email for an hour and learn about how to, watch an owl through a virtual camera, or all participate in this, Alzheimer's town hall together, things like that. And then I also wanted to point out that we did create a 5 ways to stay connected video, which was created by one of our staff members early on in the process that just encourages members to think about virtual connections as still connections, and provided some tangible examples of ways that they could do that. And then in summer, we're moving forward, continuing online. We do have a class schedule and a class grid online. So if you copy down that web link, or if you click on it when you get the PowerPoint, you can see all of this stuff. We are very transparent with all of our materials. And if there's anything that wets your whistle, it's yours. So our class schedule, our class grid, that video, links to our community care letters, that's all online. And then we'll just go to the next slide now.
Abby, before you leave the slide,
Yes.
we had a couple of questions regarding the security of the party line link, and also, could people get on and then move to a private room while they're there?
Great question. So in regards to the security, we don't have any sort of waitlist option. It is unmonitored. So what we do is we encourage members, if you see anything on there that's not supposed to be happening, they know to text me, email me, call me right away, and just hop off the link. So it is only sent to our members. We don't obviously have any way of making sure that they don't forward it off to other people, but the party line link is not online. It's not on our website. So anyone in the public cannot get access to it. It's just emailed to our members. And I'll say this, since March 17th, when this all happened, it has been going on 24/7, and we have not had one problem with security. And then in terms of subgroups of members getting on and going in a private room, no, that hasn't happened yet. Normally what we see happening is that members will reserve the party line if they want to have kind of a more private session. So we have an activities calendar. That's the link, that Google Doc link that's underneath that first bullet point. And basically what it does is it just says like, you know, our current affairs discussion group is going to be on from this time to this time. So that's kind of a more like a way for them to say like, we're on here right now. If you hop on the party line, you better be talking about current affairs with us, or what are you doing here? So I hope that answers the two questions.
I think so. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that we do also have a partner events calendar. This is something that we've been doing for almost a year now. So we partner with a lot of local organizations across the Valley, and actually some outside of the Valley too. And we try to celebrate the things that they do and encourage our members to participate in the activities that they're holding. Some of our partners offer discounts for our members, things like that. And so when this whole transition happened, we went, great, a lot of these places are doing online stuff. Let's put that on the events calendar. And so our members can support local organizations virtually by attending their events, by navigating through that events calendar. And then I also just wanted to link to our Zoom instructions and our student member code of conduct. So our Zoom instructions have just been kind of helpful in allowing our members to feel more comfortable engaging online. I think that before we have conversations about how to engage online, we have to have conversations about how we allow the people who are participating to feel comfortable doing so. So if you want to look at our Zoom instructions, they've been really helpful in, with our members and having them navigate successfully online. Our student member code of conduct, we did update it for the Zoom world. We do obviously use Zoom. So if you want to look at that and see kind of what we talk about in terms of disruptions and best practices for muting and unmuting and having your webcam on and off, once again, that's just kind of there. If it's something that's of interest to you or you're looking for something, might as well not reinvent the wheel if it fits. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out was that ASU Now story. So we did have a really awesome ASU Now story that celebrated the power of connectedness, because just like Sue said, our members are here for the people. I'd like to say that they're here because of all of the awesome stuff that I do and all of the things that the staff does. But at the end of the day, they're here for each other and they're here for the connections that they've made. And so this is kind of a personal interest story that highlights one of our most connected members, Nancy Wolter, and her husband as they navigated through him being diagnosed with COVID and recovering from that, and their desire to just continue to support us and make sure that we stayed afloat. And so if you have a chance to check that story out, it's a really special story. Once again, that's our contact information there at the bottom and our website. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you want to duplicate anything, if you want to steal parts of our stuff, do so. And if you have questions about how to steal our stuff and need assistance with that, email me. That's not stealing anymore, but email me, and I'm happy to assist. You know, when it's one of those things, I really believe in the power of social connectedness, and I think that right now our members and our participants are yearning for ways to stay connected, and so I'm happy to help anybody who's trying to make that happen. So thank you to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present, and yeah, I'm excited to learn.
Thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate it. Anything else for Abby Bill before we move to the next speaker?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I love the idea of the party line. I think it's a great way because it's one link that people in the organization can use. And obviously it's important to keep a calendar so that people know when activities are happening, but love the idea. It's great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on then to the UCLA Retirees Association, Michael Heafy and Judith Tuck.
There we are. Hello,
There we
everyone.
are.
I'm Michael Heafy, and I'm here with my colleague in the program committee, Judith Tuck, from UCLA's Retirees Association. Judith had the brilliant idea of coming up with a program called Armchair Adventures. Now, someone may have thought of this before, but Judith is the backbone of this one. So I asked the committee if they could come up with places they have experienced or would like to that we could visit virtually. And we got a whole series of ideas, and we're actually going to start up a little bit of that this coming month. We're going to make the announcement to our group for a couple of virtual tours. One, you'll see the website for the New York Botanical Garden, and here in Southern California we have a whole series of art museums, very well-known art museums, that you can join a lecture about the founders of those museums. And I can't get over how good all you guys look after being snowbound for 2 months. And I can't do a thing with my hair, I tell you. I'm a combination of George Hearn and Sweeney Todd and Stephen King without any of their talents. Anyway, like you, we miss our friends, and the connectivity that programs, whether it's tours or lectures, really kind of sets people off. And we'd like to be with them more than just virtually, but that's not the case. And I don't know how long that case is going to exist. Now, I'm guessing that a lot of you would like to travel. That seems to be one of the big things for retirees to do. I used to do that with my wife. I'd tag along when she'd go out of town for work after I retired. So we believe out there in the cyber, there is an untold number of places, exciting, interesting places to visit. So we had some suggestions, and there are also books, and I'm talking about hard copy material with ideas and places to visit. In addition, we're lucky enough to have one of our Retiree Association board members, and thank you for the new slide with all those sites, who does some pretty elaborate travel logs of his visits to foreign places, and we're nudging him to provide us a link to one of those so we can see firsthand from his perspective what those places were like. But we need that connection. We want to bring our membership a little more excitement, a little more activity, and interesting places to go. So we start locally, as the previous slide suggested, and then expanded to regional, and then national, and then international locations. So you can check all these sites out. All of these are available from their website or from YouTube or a whole series of other locations, just to get your feet wet in terms of going other places while staying glued to your computer screen.
All right. Thank you,
Michael,
Michael.
could I add something?
Oh, please. Yes.
Okay. We also think that these sites have to be curated in some way when we introduce them. So we're adding a little thought as to what you should look for or why we think they're special. And with the travel log that we hope in fact, he's a past president of the organization, we hope that he will do an online Zoom travel program. He puts his slides together with music and a dialogue. So we're going to invite people to come on and ask him questions about the travel program that he's going to present. We're also looking at a wine tasting where you would each buy the wine and then have go through a whole wine tasting together virtually. So we hope we're going to send the first one out with the next bi-monthly newsletter as an invitation for everyone to join.
Great. Thank you, Judith and Michael. Any questions, Bill, for Judith and
Yes,
Michael?
yes, a couple questions. More on access to the website, the retirees website. I think that was in the slides. And you will be sending out the PowerPoint to everyone with the hot links.
Correct.
Yes, so there's
the
the
PowerPoint
one.
will have it, and this is the link to their website. Yes.
Yes, and then a question about how do you carry out a group activity with the Armchair Adventures? What do you mean by group activity?
Well, the group activity with the travel log is definitely one of the group activities because you would see the travel log as a group at one time. So sort of like we're doing now, it would be a live stream presentation, and the person would share his PowerPoint presentation or his presentation on, let's say, travels to Iceland. And at any time, if you had a question, you could use the chat room or do Q&A to ask questions about it. We could go into breakout groups if we want. We have an active travel group about where people would like to go and discussions of that sort. The wine tasting would be the same thing. You would, if we can partner with a winery, we would, all of us, we'd invite people to buy a bottle of the wine and have someone from the winery, as we assemble at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, let's say, walk us through the notes about that wine and ask everybody for their input as to what they think about it. So that's how we'll make it more of a social connection.
So any of these Armchair Adventures really could be adapted that way if you wanted to, right, Judith? I mean, you could do, say, the Smithsonian tour as a scheduled time, at a scheduled time. People could log on, you could share your screen, and then you could have a discussion afterwards. So it could be an option where you either just send out the link and people watch it on their own time, or you could coordinate it as a group event.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Any other questions for Michael and Judith?
Not that I see.
Okay, then let's move on to Joan
you.
Merdinger. Thank you. Joan Merdinger from San Jose State University Emeritus and Retired Faculty Association. Joan here?
Joan?
Yes, I'm sorry.
There we go.
I apologize. I'm Joan Merdinger. I'm a board member of the San Jose State University Emeritus and Retired Faculty Association. Just a bit of context, San Jose State is part of the 22 campus CSU or California State University system. Our Faculty Retiree Association is funded by member dues from our approximately 250 members. Our association is 34 years old, and it's also affiliated with a statewide CSU Emeritus and Retired Faculty and Staff Association. Our association has a number of events that we plan yearly. I'm going to focus on our annual business meeting that's always scheduled in May. This year, due to the pandemic, it was canceled. The program has included, since 2015, the annual business meeting, a featured speaker, and very time-limited presentations from the awardees of the IRFA Faculty Research and Creative Activity Awards. So since 2014-15, through an RFP process that's conducted by a board committee, our association gives $2,500 to 2 to 3 currently employed faculty members through this competitive process. Our only fundraising efforts actually go towards funding these awards. And we partner with our Center for Faculty Development on the SJSU campus to send out the RFP to campus faculty. This year we selected 3 awardees, and we invited each of them to make a 1 to 3 minute presentation about their projects and their plans for the use of their award funding. And that was to occur at the May meeting. When we canceled the meeting, we decided that for the awardees, we wanted to accomplish 2 things. One was that we wanted to honor them. And we also wanted to inform our membership about how their donations were going to be utilized. Thanks, Sue, for the next slide. So after some discussion at a recent board meeting, we've decided that we'll be inviting each of the 3 awardees to record a 1 to 3 minute YouTube video that will be posted on the IRFA webpage. And those invitations to the awardees will go out next week. So you can go to our webpage now, but they're not posted yet because we still have, this is one of these in progress things. So I think during this unusual time that our board was forced to return to our original intent, what were we trying to accomplish? Well, we were trying to honor the recipients of the annual faculty award and let our members know that their donations were making a difference in the work of the faculty awardees. So coming up with a solution that's virtual helps us to accomplish both of those. And we anticipate that more of our association members will see the videos than the number who would have attended our in-person event. So it's just a small example, but hope that's useful to people. Thanks very much. Look forward to your questions if you have any.
Any questions, Bill?
I don't see any questions.
Okay. You can also, of course, follow up with any of the speakers after the webinar. As I said, we'll be sending out the slides and the links so that you can contact any of them with more questions. Okay, next we will hear from the UC Davis Retiree Center, Kyle Urban.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thanks for having us on, Sue. I wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about 2 events that we've completed recently, and I'll spend less time on the events themselves and actually more time highlighting the differences between a Zoom meeting and a Zoom webinar for those that haven't had the opportunity to use both. We have our Emeriti Association and our Retiree Association on campus, and they meet quarterly in a joint meeting format where we usually have a presentation and then business meetings for each association. And I apologize, there's a typo in the slide that I missed. It should be UCDEA and UCDRA.
Oh, sorry.
That's my fault. So they meet quarterly, and those are usually well attended on campus, and we were kind of unsure how our turnout would be for Zoom. Our boards meet monthly, but with the general body, we were curious to see what would happen. So we had our Emeriti, Distinguished Emeriti Award winner, Linda Morris, spoke for about an hour at this meeting via Zoom. And that went really well. She's an incredible speaker, so that was great. But after that, we actually used breakout rooms for the first time, which you all will get experience with today, to split out our associations into their separate meeting rooms and also to filter out the non-members that wanted to attend just the presentation portion of that meeting. It was a little bit complicated with 75 folks, similar to this meeting, and that everybody needs to be diligent in muting and turning off their camera when applicable. And so we gave folks instructions to mute themselves, turn off cameras when they come into the presentation format, and once they got to breakout rooms to enable those controls so that they could show up on video. The breakout rooms were new for us, and it was new for pretty much everyone that attended that meeting. And I can tell you, as the moderator of that meeting, it's a little bit of controlled chaos when you're assigning people to rooms. So just know that, and know that, you know, Sue may experience that a little bit today. But if you have folks sign up in advance through Zoom specifically and not through your university site, you can actually pre-assign those breakout rooms before the meeting starts. But that only works with Zoom registration as opposed to sending out the link on your own. So you'll have to check that part out. Sue, if you don't mind going to the next slide. In contrast to that, Zoom webinar is much different than a meeting in that only the speakers actually show up on video. Everyone else is muted, and there's a chat feature as well as a question and answer feature that you can use. Now, Zoom webinar comes with a cost, depending on what your university or organization's license requirements with Zoom are, or if you have the paid version at all. That'll judge your, or I guess build your webinar cost. And you can get webinar for 100, 300, 500, and the cost varies based on that. What we did using Zoom webinar was had a one-on-one interview with Charlie Bamforth. He's also known as the Pope of Foam. So he's our Professor Emeritus of the Brewing Program at UC Davis. So a really fascinating talk, and I interviewed Charlie in a one-on-one format. We got just over 130 attendees on at one time. And the cool part about the webinar is that while folks cannot communicate directly with the speaker using their voice or video, you don't have to worry, one, about getting Zoom bombed, which I know is a concern of some people. And I just saw those questions about the party line at ASU. So you don't have to worry about any Zoom bombing. You don't have to worry about conversations happening in the background and microphones maybe coming on. It's a lot less stressful on you as a moderator. And the Q&A feature is actually really nice because folks can ask questions, and I know you can't see it in here because it's set up slightly different, but folks can ask questions. You can actually bring those questions onto the screen and answer those questions as you go. So it's a really interesting feature and something we're certainly going to try to use more in the future. Survey feedback on both of these events was good. We did put in a lot of legwork prior to both to make sure they went as smoothly as possible. Of course, we ended up running into some problems with a link as well. So Sue, I can relate to today. And unfortunately, it was only for folks that were on campus. For us, it was really strange. It was a UC Davis related error, but the other 130 people were able to get on. So it was good. But Zoom webinar and Zoom meetings are two totally different animals. If you're looking to kind of quiet down the noise around meetings, I'd encourage you to check out Zoom webinar. If your goal is interaction, though, Zoom meetings is what you would want to continue to use. But I think bringing to light that Zoom webinar functionality is going to be big for us in the future and helps simplify our processes a little bit.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, we have looked at the difference in ourselves at Arohi between webinar and meeting, and we want to keep the interactivity, at least right now, but I think for larger groups, definitely the webinar makes a lot of things easier. So yeah, thank you.
And we do a lot of partnering with our alumni association, and we're continuing to do that, especially since virtual programming is so easy to share. And so we're anticipating that sometimes we're going to end up with these groups of 300 or 400 people. In meetings, I think you get capped a little bit below that. So
100, yeah, I think it's 100.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kyle, Bill?
Nope. Thank you, Kyle.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Gray Krause at Emory University Emeritus College. Is Gray there?
Okay. Thank you.
There we go.
I'm Gray Krause, Director of the Emory University Emeritus College. And by the end of March, we had moved all of our programs from our in-person meetings to Zoom. And we were having an average of 2 programs a month, and we increased our programming to more than once a week. So it was quite a massive effort. But we were coming up with our annual new members reception and awards reception, and that's always a special event held in a special room with special guests and so forth. And we were confronted, well, how can we make that somewhat special? It seems like all Zoom meetings are sort of the same. And we did several things. we prepared a program just as we would have in an in-person event. But instead of printing it out, we sent the PDFs to those who had registered, so they would have a copy of the program beforehand. So they would have, it would sort of be like getting the program as they came into the meeting. And I wore a coat and tie that dressed things up. That's unusual for me at any point, so that sort of signified something that was a little special. And the other part, though, was to try to have the program go as smoothly as possible. And so in part that meant having a practice session beforehand with the ones who are going to be participating in the event. The practice session was actually more than just practicing for the whole event. So one of our awardees for our awards portion is in his late 80s. And so I called him up and talked with him. He had never used Zoom. And he said, well, he thought he would have to go to his daughter's house because she had a laptop. But then talking with him, it turned out he had an iPhone. And I assured him that the iPhone would work and what he should do. And so then I contacted him again the next day, and we had a practice session just with that member and me, so that he got his Zoom up on his iPhone working. And then in the practice session with all the participants, he was there and he understood how it would all go and what he would do. And then at the actual awards ceremony, when it was his turn to be awarded, his video came up and everybody could see him while he was being lauded. And then he responded to everyone and was very gracious in his comments, and several of his family members were at the meeting. So that was just an indication of how I think the meeting as a whole turned out to be special. So a practice session is important, but in addition to that, I think it's absolutely essential to have at least one person whose sole function is to help manage Zoom in the background. And that has to do with muting and unmuting and renaming and so forth. And so my administrative assistant is doing that, and I'm also working on that. So she's doing that sort of full time, and I'm also assisting with that. And that makes the event go much smoother, and it also prepares one in case there are any issues with security at all. So as I was talking with Sue about this, I thought, well, what I would do is write out a few bullet points of things that I thought were important to have an event go smoothly. And once that got to 2 pages, it was clear that I couldn't talk about a lot of that. So there are additional Zoom tips, and I think Sue will send those out to anybody who's interested.
I'll send it out to all the participants, yeah.
So we recorded that event, and that link is under the first one. That's a Zoom recording of the event, and then we send out an email to all of our members, and we wrote that email and we wrote that event up with pictures from the session and so forth as if it had been a live event, and that's in our May 6th newsletter as well. So that's a little bit of how we tried to make one of our signature events somewhat special.
Great, thank you, Gray. Any questions or comments, Bill, for Gray?
None have been chatted.
Okay, thank you. So our last member who would like to share today is Stacy Gordon from New York University. Stacy? Stacy there?
Oh, there we go. Now
There we go. Hi,
okay.
Stacy.
Hi, everyone. So I'm the program director of Next Phase Adult Caregiving and Retirement at the Office of Work Life at New York University. It's a position I started in November. And one of my goals is to actually begin to create an NYU faculty retiree society. So I've been working with Sue as a consultant and she's helping me sort of create the society with our NYU retiring faculty. And as a prelude to the initiation of the NYU Faculty Retiree Society, the provost requested that the Work-Life Office create a celebration for our retiring faculty. We had a class of 30 retiring faculty for 2019 and 2020. And the event was originally scheduled for April 21st, and we went online around March 7th or 8th. And we were contacted by the provost, who said, let's run the event despite the closure. We want to, keep things moving and really honor these retiring faculty. And so we very quickly had to pivot and bring the ceremony, actually what was called the Retiring Faculty Cocktail Reception, online. So we changed the invitations that were actually sent out by paperless post to an online event. I began to email all 30 of our retiring faculty to create some buzz and positive energy and get to know these faculty members as well. One of the things that we really wanted to do, one of the things we really wanted to bring to this event was a sense of NYU, of the university, at a time where we were all feeling so sort of removed from this momentous occasion, retirement, and sort of the whole end of year graduation ceremony. So what we did was we got a recording of the NYU graduation bagpipes. We showed a video that had pictures, as you see on the screen, of the NYU Washington Square campus. We scrolled through the program, which you can also see on the screen, and read everyone's names and their positions that they were retiring from were listed. And it was actually a really lovely event. I was thinking that I would play a clip of the event when I finish this slide, so that you can get a sense of what it was like. But the sort of culmination of the event was the provost's toast. We had asked everyone to have a beverage on hand so that they could toast, they could be toasted, and that they could toast to the provost could toast them. And that actually, and it sort of lent such a festive tone to the entire celebration. And I want to just play, let's see, I want to just, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, just play.
Oh, while you're doing that, let me just ask a couple of questions that came up.
Sure.
Who funds the cocktail receptions? And
Look,
you may have just answered that by BYO.
Right, but it was originally, it was supposed to be funded by the provost's office, basically the provost's office and Work Life together. It was BYO, so it was, it was pretty low budget. So by the way, I can't screen share by the host.
I'm going to have to. Why don't we send the link out after?
Well,
Okay,
someone asked, is the recording of the ceremony available to anyone else?
I just shared it with everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll send it out in the follow-up email as well.
Sure.
All right.
So, the celebration, oh, are you there?
Sorry about that. Sorry. Hold on. Uh-oh. Are you there, Stacy?
I'm here, but this is the wrong slide.
Right. Sorry. Let me go back.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we ended up getting really wonderful feedback from, both the provost, which was wonderful, but also from all of the retiring faculty who said that it felt like a real celebration, that they really felt honored by, sort of all of the effort that we put in to make this into, a special moment for them. And some of the highlights were having faculty there who lived abroad or who were abroad for the semester in their on a sabbatical before they retired. So they were able to join from really all over the world. We had someone from Paris, someone from Afghanistan, someone from London, and that was really wonderful to have, to have them join us. In addition, in New York, we're a little bit limited by our space, and we had limited the event to 75 people in a certain room that was very elegant. We wanted to create a very elegant atmosphere. And in the end, going online, we eliminated that spatial spatial limitation. So we had everyone, invite whoever they wanted to invite. We had whole families watching the event together. And all of those who attended had very wonderful things to say.
That's great.
So I want to move on to the next slide.
I'm not sure why. There we go.
So as I said before, this NYU Faculty Retiree Society is it's literally not yet in existence. We are currently running faculty focus groups. So I just finished our first faculty focus group. We're identifying, how the retiring faculty this group was actually the group that was just celebrated. So they have not yet all fully retired. So we got their input and their input about how they want to design their own group, how they want to make it their own, what types of activities they would like to see. So that was a incredibly informative first focus group. The next one is in 2 weeks. That's with the retirees who have retired in the last 5 years. And from these two focus groups, we're hoping to identify executive committee candidates and to begin online planning sessions, virtual events like book clubs and lectures to foster community. I love the idea of the party line, which is, something that we could definitely bring in the future once we have a group. But actually in this first focus group, we found actually a number of people who knew each other and made new connections. And it was really lovely to see this group, sort of this nascent group, begin to really begin to gel. So our hope is to plan a large in-person Retiree Society kickoff event in the fall or winter of 2020, 2021. I'll keep you updated as time goes on, how we do this. I've been taking notes from all of your presentations. And yes, by the way, Deborah, I am full-time. And I am part of a 5-person staff at NYU Work Life. I'm a social worker by training, and I'm currently working with an MSW level intern and a BA student. And I have the support of the communications program manager and a logistics sort of administrative person in the office.
So NYU has created a lot of support through the provost's office to get this initiative started, which is fantastic.
There's a huge group of eligible faculty, retiree eligible faculty, and the university really wants to support this new effort to create the society. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Any other questions, Bill, for Stacy?
No, in fact, Deborah and Stacy took care of it on their own.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. We're all learning how to use Zoom to its best ability, right? All right. Thank you all for your sharing your wonderful initiatives. As I said, we're all just getting started with this. So the more we can share ideas, the less work it is for all of us. I think all of ROHI members are willing and able to share anything with one another. I love what Abby said about, you can steal anything from her. And I think that everyone in ROHI feels the same way. So I really appreciate everyone's willingness to share. So I wanted to just talk real quickly about a couple of things I had thought of before the meeting and before we break into groups. Stacy talked about your retirement reception, which actually went into a lot of these things. You had people submit videos. Another thing that you might consider for a retiree's reception is possibly, drive-by, send or deliver retirement gifts. We're going to save a lot of money by not doing in-person events. So we may need to rethink how that budget can be used to engage our retirees. I'm getting a lot of ideas from high school graduations right now. and how our high schools are honoring their graduates in different ways like this. So I think looking beyond retirement organizations for ideas can be very beneficial as well. Our high school in town, for example, is doing a drive-up parade, and they have a little photo op area set up. Students jump out of their car, take a photo, they drive by, the principal gives them a rose, and it's a really fun and festive event. Whether that would work for retirees, I don't know, but I do think that looking beyond our organizations for other ideas can be really beneficial. The other type of event that I thought of before this webinar was art and craft shows. I know that a lot of our retirement organizations do sponsor art and craft shows. So I thought of a few different possibilities for that. Possibly a slideshow of the artist's works. You could host a virtual reception, similar to what Stacy recommended and what Gray talked about. You could sponsor artist studio tours where they could take their little iPhone around and just do a brief little tour of their studio. So I think there are lots of different ways to engage these types of events virtually as well. And there could be brief artist demonstrations as a possibility. As just an example, my aunt, who I have to give her a shout out because she's 93 and she lives in a retirement community and she loves to do little watercolor paintings. And so her idea was to create these cards that she would make available for people for free. So she created these cards and she created PDFs of the card and then sent them out to family and friends. So if they wanted to send a card for somebody, they could use her designs to do that. So I thought that was a great way to engage a creative person and to bring her joy to other people. The other thing you want to think about is ways to personalize your virtual events. One of the things I think is a challenge, particularly with social events, is that everybody tries to talk at once or there's awkward silence. So I think it can be really helpful to personalize your events by having people do something, you know, a pet show and tell, maybe a pizza party where everybody orders their own pizza and, you know, they talk about possibly what ingredient on pizza they would never have and what they would always have. An ice cream social. I had an idea that maybe we would do an event where everybody creates a hat out of things they could find in their kitchen and they wear their silly hat to the meeting. So, you know, think about ways that you can make your events fun and give them some personality. And then also providing structure. We've talked about a lot of these ideas today. One thing I did notice is that Netflix now has a new feature that they call Netflix Party, where everybody can watch the same movie at once. And then there's a chat feature that's opened up on the side of the screen so you can sit around and talk to each other and watch the movie like you're sitting in the same room. If you maybe could do a recipe exchange or a cooking demo. We talked about a virtual wine tasting. There are many, many different apps for doing virtual game nights. And so it might be a great way to involve your members to find out who has these interests and would be willing to sponsor. And the idea of having an open party line would really make this easy for you to implement as well. So now we're going to break into our discussion and sharing. And because we got a late start, okay, so I just wanted to share this really fun slide now that everybody has seen each other on Zoom. Zoom meeting, audio only or with video. And there's also a link here. I had come across this, this blog of Zoom tips for looking good on Zoom that I thought might be helpful for organizations to send out to their members about looking good on Zoom. That's just for a little bit of fun, no reason. Okay, and then, okay, how come I can't? There we go. So I would like to, for those who can stay on, we will do some sharing, but I know some of you may have to leave. So I just wanted to give my closing comments first, and then we will share comments from each of the groups. That this, I believe, is the time that all of our organizations need to zoom in and zoom out. And I got this phrase, not actually original. It's from Sarah Slater, who's a consultant and an author of several books, including The End of Membership as We Know It. She works exclusively with organizations on membership strategies. And what she recommends is what she calls zoom in and zoom out, because we've talked about a lot of ideas today, and in the discussion groups, we talked about a lot more, but it's important to focus on the few strategies that are best for your organization, because you can't do everything. And if you keep in mind that you want to focus on the strategies that are, one, mission critical, and two, member centric. But at the same time, you want to zoom out and keep an eye on the landscape, because we don't know where this situation is taking us. And so keeping track of what's most important to you, but also keeping an eye on what's coming in the future. So with that, I would like, for those who've been able to stay on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other. And I want to ask the groups, if you could, the facilitator could just share maybe 1 or 2 ideas that came out of your group rather briefly. And I'm going to start with Carrie, because I know Carrie needs to get off the meeting soon here. So Carrie, what came out of your group?
We had, were assigned wine tasting and arts and craft. And so we talked at great length about wine tasting and a little bit about the arts and craft. We had it range from reaching out to local distilleries. For those who don't drink and who do drink, some distilleries have moved to making hand sanitizers. And so you could sort of educate on both fronts, or connect with retirees on both fronts. Farber is the distillery in Atlanta, Georgia that's been doing this. So we'll share links to their website. And then if you don't end up doing delivery of wine to each of your house to drink the same bottle of wine, you could have your members share 2-minute little snippets of their favorite wine, and you could talk about it. Or you can engage a local liquor store where it would be easier to get that bottle of wine. So I think the general consensus was start first with your local business and see what's possible to go from there. But to also have options for both non-drinkers and drinkers. The arts and craft piece, UCLA has had an incredible arts and crafts program that they disbanded, largely because it was bringing in retirees that were otherwise not engaged with the Retiree Association. They were just coming in for the arts and crafts, mainly to promote and sell their products. So they disbanded that, and so we didn't talk much more about arts and crafts and shifting that over. We talked a little bit about the difficulties and how people are going in different directions around their philosophies around sheltering in place versus getting together, and there's been a bit of a push and pull.
Yeah. Okay.
We had a really great group.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. And as I mentioned, we'll be sending the bullet point notes that the facilitators will send to me. So you'll get into see more detail about what each group talked about too. Aisha, can you tell us a couple things that came out of your group?
Our topic was happy hour and scholarship, but we kind of pivoted. Somehow we got talking more about how to get retirees who are anxious about using Zoom and IT support.
Oh, that's fine.
So we talked about different training ideas and different sort of test Zooms that people could do to get comfortable using it, and also the alternatives of calling in versus downloading an app or going to their website. And then we talked a little bit about who funds a lot of the programs that we're doing and how the programs are supported by each campus, whether that's members fees and registration fees, fundraising, or endowments. And that springs our program funding and gets us able to do different programming for different financial support that we need to run them. And then we could have definitely used more time. So
yeah, okay.
Did I miss anything, Abby? I don't think so, but I think that was it.
I just want to throw in our Ollie at ASU website. We design training materials for our members. Very short, very simplistic, user-friendly. You might pull something off of there. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Jessica had some Wi-Fi issues. So Bill, do you have a report from that group?
The main thing that I was getting off of it was that some of the people are really not interested, retirees in particular, not interested in being challenged by technology. And how to get people, how to get them involved. So Rick's comment might be very helpful. And then it reminded me of your webinar a couple of webinars ago, I don't remember which one, where you talk about the digital divide. And there are a lot of people who don't have the capabilities. And the Wi-Fi example, you just don't have a big enough download speed, and you have no clue how to get that increased. So those were the big issues. And I popped in and out of a couple of sessions, so I don't have bullet points. I hope stay.
Now, Ray may have other comments.
Betty, you're on mute.
Gray or Betty?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that,
also, I think we talked a little bit about how some of our retirees are living in different places throughout the United States and around the world. And that as far as travel goes, we could maybe invite them to share, you know, where they're living and what they like about where they're living. We touched a little bit on our first topic of travel.
Okay, good. Thank you. Gray, did you have something else?
well, I was going to say, the two big points we had was that Zoom allows us to have members join from anywhere into our meeting. And so that whole idea of travel, well, our members are living everywhere and they can participate in Zoom. So that was one big idea. And the other one was not quite the issue of a number of our members being afraid of tech, but not convinced that it was anything that would be good for them. And I think that's what Brenda was bringing up, that the idea is not to tell them how to do it, but to convince them that they want to do it. And you know, the fact that by using Zoom, they can then connect with their children and grandchildren and other family and friends, so that they see why they should bother with it. I think, wasn't that really your point, Brenda?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt here. Chris has to leave quickly, so she would like to go next.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I have 11 o'clock meeting.
That's okay.
We had our discussion. I think we had some great ideas. One of our colleagues is in Memphis, and of course it's the home of barbecue. And our assignment was book club and retiree barbecue. And I think that was Carol Ranta who shared with that. So if I've forgotten something, let me know. But apparently they normally have this wonderful Memphis in May program where there's just barbecue galore. And if that's not happening, it's now in October, hopefully. But you know, maybe the idea of going out to your local community and finding out what they do well, bring those experts in to maybe do a tour of their barbecue place. Talk about what makes their barbecue special. And it may be it's not all about eating, but perhaps people could also order in and share a barbecue as something that's been delivered. But to kind of to build upon whatever the activity is, where you bring in a local expert who can share and get some excitement. You know, what size group? My thought was that maybe these could be done in smaller groups of 30 to 40 people, where you really have the opportunity to have that social moment. How to recreate that hanging around the barbecue where you're together with your colleagues and friends. Food is always one of those connectors, but maybe the expertise about the food can bring you in. Our other item was book club, and we had just launched our book club, which has been around for more than 10 years. And again, what was stated earlier, it's about being available to escort people into the new technology so that it becomes demystified and welcoming. And we have done that through tutorials, either in small groups of 10 or smaller, and then building on our retiree leaders so that they have the confidence to run their own meetings and take that out to their groups that exponentially takes it out to the next group. So I think we've all touched on the fact that training is critical, making the tools simple and accessible, but I think providing the experience where people start to feel confident and comfortable and see how it actually, it's not just about this experience with your organization, but they can now connect with their friends and their other activities and of course their family.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Sorry,
Yes.
goodbye. Take care, everyone.
Bye, thanks. Susan, a couple things from your group? And you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. We had a fairly small group, about 4 of us. There were 2 signed in, but we neither saw nor heard them. So I'm not sure quite what was happening there. We were talking about how you move a retiree awards ceremony to a virtual environment, and we were lucky enough to have Stacy Gordon with us, and she did play us a little clip from the recognition of retirees event, and we really saw how you could adapt that to a service award, you know, featuring the awardee, featuring tributes to that awardee, and doing whatever other shenanigans you wanted to do, music, dancing, whatever, virtually. So that seemed to us to be relatively easy to move to a virtual environment. And then our other assignment was garden club meeting. And again, we were lucky to have Rick Knopf in our breakout room, and he is a member of a garden club, although he hasn't yet done this virtually. But we talked about 2 ways to do this. So 2 quick bullet points. Everyone brings a cutting or a plant and talks about it, or you feature 1 person, 1 garden, and you adapt the armchair technique, the armchair travel technique, show the group around your garden, talk about its design and so on and so forth, and bring that back to the virtual group. So those are 2 good ways. We also did talk a little bit about icebreakers and Zoom in general. One advantage of Zoom that hasn't quite been touched on directly, it does allow you to be in contact with people who don't normally come to your meetings. Mm-hmm. So not just about the travel aspect that they can, introduce you to where they live, but also that they can actually be there virtually. Whereas those who live in Montana and Florida and Arizona might not necessarily come to your upstate New York meeting. And Stacy mentioned another sort of icebreaker idea whereby in a meeting you could feature a person with a designated questioner who would ask questions, how has your day gone so far? What was the best part about your day? How are you managing? What music are you listening to? That kind of thing, to give you more of a sort of in-depth connection with one of your group. So that's
Great.
me.
Thank you, Susan. Diane, how about a couple things from your group? You're on mute, Diane. I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, sorry. We had 2 assignments. One was a movie club, and the other was celebrating the 100th birthday party. And with the movie club, we talked about Netflix Party, which you had mentioned, Sue, early in the presentation. And Stephanie did some research and found out that that actually requires a Chrome browser, and it's not a Netflix offering, but it is a Chrome offering. And you can, yes, so it's really kind of fun. So large groups can watch the movie together. You can actually have someone introduce the movie. You can have somebody facilitate a chat, question and answers afterwards. You can even schedule bathroom and popcorn breaks. So it sounded like a lot of fun and definitely something to look into. It appears there's no limit to the number of people who could attend. So it really sounds like it might be a fun option and something we want to look into a little more deeply. So the other was the 100th birthday party. And we thought we could learn from some of the things that have been going on with weddings and with graduations. You could certainly do a drive-by. We know that at many universities, people are still living in close proximity and might be able to do something like that. But Stephanie also mentioned the use of a Kudo board website, which allows you to put up messages and you can post things there. And we talked about posting messages, posting photographs, posting videos, and then maybe being able to print afterwards and be able to send that to the person whose birthday was being celebrated. we said that if they had access to a computer, you could certainly do the costumes and party hats and birthday cake and sing and do things like that. So you can also send hard copy cards. People are still enjoying things from the snail mail post office.
Right. Great.
We
Thank
had
you,
a
Diane.
quick question. Oh, I'm sorry. We talked about brainstorming and other things, and we had a quick question about how could you take a virtual tour, for example, of the Smithsonian and do that collectively? How do you mimic social interaction in those tours that are links to places like the Smithsonian or the National Gallery of Art? But that was basically our discussion.
Yeah, to answer that question, a person could just host a Zoom meeting and then open up your web browser and go to that virtual tour and then share your screen with everyone who's logged on. And then just as we've done here today, instead of sharing a PowerPoint presentation, you would share the link, open up the link and watch the video virtual tour together. And then you could stop sharing your screen like we've done here, where you could see everybody again and have a conversation about it. So that would be an easy way to do it. Okay, last group is Linda. A couple things from your group, Linda?
Okay, well, we talked, our topics were a cooking group and a wellness fair. I have to be honest, we talked a lot about the cooking group and we did not get to the topic of a wellness fair.
That's fine, yeah.
But some of the things that we did talk about really connected pretty well, Sue, to the slides that you presented. And one, I would put it in the category of structure. And Vivian had pointed out the need to have roles such as a lead and then those who are passive. And it doesn't mean that those who are passive don't participate, but it is helpful to have a person or persons who are in leader roles to help keep things moving, especially if they get, slow or there's a lack of involvement. And then the other part was the personalization, the need to have personalization. So in terms of the cooking group, we could pick a recipe and it could be something like pizza. And then the personalization part could be people talking about different types of toppings that we might put on a pizza that can actually be unusual for other persons. And I can relate to that because I had never had a pizza with pineapple on it, but it was actually good. I have to confess. And so ways of creating opportunities for people to participate and ways for people to exchange information. And then the other approach was the more traditional, to have an expert type of a speaker. And the example actually wasn't about cooking, and it was sort of about a topic that sometimes people don't deal well with, and that's estate planning and palliative care. But felt that actually they had done such a program and felt that they had a good response to it and a higher participation in it than they might have had at other times, and perhaps it's a sign of the time. But just what we've already talked about, the taking approach of having an expert speaker.
Right.
Another topic that was indirectly a part of our conversation, but maybe it does need to be mentioned. One person reported actually they do a cooking group in their retirement organization, but they use FaceTime for that. Okay. And GoToMeeting. I'm sorry, I think the first one was GoToMeeting, because there were some concerns about security in Zoom. But maybe that's a topic that needs to, there are other programs besides Zoom And you
Yeah.
can do many of these things I've used GoToMeeting and WebEx, and they also are viable deliveries points if someone doesn't have access to Zoom or is opposed to it in some way.
Right.
And I was about to offer this idea in our group, and it kind of fits with what somebody was talking about just before. But I have an annual get together with some friends of mine from college, and we're not able to do that this year. People come from all over the place. And I was thinking, well, how could we do this on Zoom? And so I like the idea in Zoom, the potential to create a kind of an environmental setting using a virtual background.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then what I was going to do was create a virtual background and then ask all of those who were participating to dress accordingly.
Nice.
Mine was going to be a tropical island, so they had to dress in beachwear basically, and to have at least a beverage that would be of a tropical nature.
Yeah.
So you can reach other dimensions other than just people having the opportunity to talk and exchange.
Love that idea. Yeah.
The other thing I did, I confess, I took a little bit of our time and asked people to introduce themselves, because there were several people, I don't think we knew each other, and I think that's what we want to do in our retirement organizations, is help build a sense of connection to people. Sure. So I was really impressed about the diverse geographic areas that we have represented in our group, and I thought it was kind of exciting, really.
Great. Thank you, Linda. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your ideas. As I mentioned, I will be having the facilitator send me their bullet points and send those out to everybody so you can follow up individually with one another. I will send out the list of participants with email addresses. So if for some reason somebody does not want to be included in that list, please let me know. Otherwise, I will send the list out so that you can contact one another individually if you wanted to follow up on something. As I mentioned, I'll also be sending the PDF of the slides and all the links that we talked about. I also will be posting the recording of this on our YouTube channel, so you could forward it to other people if you wanted to. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. We are all learning Zoom at the same time here, and every time we do something, I figure out something new. And lastly, I will be sending an evaluation, and I ask, please fill those out. I know a lot of times you get it and you're like, oh, I'm not going to take time. It's just a few questions. It really helps us as we move forward about how we want to do future webinars, if they're useful, if they're not useful, what format you prefer. And I'm also going to be asking how often you might want to have a get-together like this to discuss ideas. We may be talking about doing less formal presentations and more just idea sharing, which is a lot easier, of course, to put together and just have a topic and break out into breakout rooms. So there's lots of options that we can do through Arohi to provide you support. So if you fill out those evaluations, then we'll know what you want going forward. And I'm also going to send a link to our Arohi discussion forum. You can go online and subscribe to the discussion forum, and then you can also carry out these conversations as a group via the discussion forum. I really encourage you to do that. Our discussion forum feature hasn't been very well utilized in the past, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to continue sharing ideas. So I encourage you to subscribe for it. And that is all for today. Thank you so much for participating, and really appreciate all the ideas. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sue, and thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Bill. Bye-bye.